I'm gonna try this one. Put it at the last. Now I wanna try that. Okay. Set up a simple yeah, you can do it on desktop as well.
And then it's just
network. So today's starting. It's all good. I'm gonna do Starbucks next. She was like, I just didn't know how to do it. I was like, no, I can hang out with Starbucks.
You know, the first row is scary. It's really scary. You're like, what is this crazy person gonna make me do today? Let's not. Oh, are they? We'll give you that.
So that might be good.
That's all right. Try not to.
Yesterday, I'm just not going over.
Power and perfect. Right during the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you're like, oh, I'm the last person and I have to take the front row.
That's okay.
Okay, it's 9:30. So, all the anticipation, I'm like pacing for the last 15 minutes. When can I start? When can I start? Hi! Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Day 2, first session. Holy heck. Familiar faces, it's always nice to see. So, thank you so much for attending my session. My name, can everybody hear me? Do I need to use the microphone? My husband always yells, thank you. My husband always yells at me, you're so loud. Do you know what I do right now? He's a teacher too. So that's why I'm like, I'm PMD Annie. I'm from Montour High School. My current role is library media specialist, but I also teach 3 project-based learning classes in the school that have kind of evolved over the past 5-7 years or so. The first one is the environmental sustainability project-based learning, so it's a mouthful. Second one is, actually second and third are brand new this year. They are integrated classes. So they are integrated math, they are English 10, History 10, and I am the STEM component of those classes. So that's for science, technology, engineering, math. I'm actually a certified science teacher as well. So the first 10 years of my career were teaching various areas of science, physical science, astronomy, and then from there the position of librarian especially came up just as I was ending. So they thought, let's do this because our new library, we want it to be very techie. So here we are today, 10 years later, talking to you about PBL. How many of you are familiar with project-based learning? How many of you use project-based learning on a regular basis? Nice, very good. We'll look at a couple of different ends of the spectrum in terms of project-based learning, but what kind of makes this different is PBL through human-centered design thinking. How many of you are familiar with the human-centered design thinking process? Okay, so we're going to look at how to kind of combine both of those together. So my first task to you is getting to know you a little bit. No, we're not doing the icebreaker. Promise. How many of you would rather just come into a session and be a passive learner? It's okay. I'm one of those people too, especially on day 2. How many of you would just rather be a passive learner? Okay. How many of you want to get in, do activities, let's do this? Oh, God, you're not making my job easy. All right, so that's okay. Part of what a PBL experience is like is trying to get a feel for the waters. What can I do for all of my students? And today that's you. So we're going to do a little mix, which is kind of what I anticipated anyway. I'm doing this presentation last night at home, and I'm like, oh God, I have to cut things out, and I don't know what to do. And I have my kids hanging on me. They're like, Mommy, I want fishy crackers. And I'm like, just stop. Give me 10 minutes. So we're going to mix it up a little bit today because I think that's going to reach most of you. If there are things that I don't get to, please feel free to contact me at any point in time, and I will be more than happy to get you any resources that you need. Because as a librarian, that's just kind of what we do. Take a minute and digest. I'm a mean girl. Like to say Gwen Stefani, I'm a rich girl. But I'm a mean girl. How many of you can relate to this? Personally and in your classroom. All of us, right? Okay. How many of you are this little cutie here? If we're in this room, a lot of us would probably, But I work with teachers every single day. Very rarely can you find me in my library. I push out to the classrooms. We have initiatives at our school. Try PBL, do PBL. Call Pam, she'll help you with PBL. All right, so this is a lot of times what I end up walking into. You have your 4, we like 3 and 4 in a group, right? Like that's a pretty number. So you definitely have this, has no idea what's going on the entire time, but is there every single day. You also have that, he says he's going to help, but then he never comes back, right? Okay, and then disappears at the beginning, and then doesn't even come back at the end. And then you're like, oh God, what do I have to do with makeup work there? That is not this session, sorry. So keep calm and carry on is all we can say about that. How can we change that group dynamic? And that's where we're bringing the idea of human-centered design thinking into this entire PBL experience. So it's about hearing from everybody and making sure that you hear from everybody. Giving everybody, even if they don't want to hear it, even if they don't want to be in that front row, giving them a voice and making them confident with their voice throughout this process. So PBL with human-centered design is not a single person group project. That makes sense, right? Okay, we have these group projects, but one single person does it all. And then they complain to you that they've done it all. On the last day that they're ready to present, you're like, oh crap, now what do I do with grading? Okay? So we build in throughout this process checkpoints, opportunities for reflection, so that that one person doesn't come to you on that last day and say, hey, I did all the work. You can say, oh yeah, the Google Doc does say you did all the work. Okay? So it is not done to assess what's covered. I hate that word too. Curriculum, what's covered at the end of a unit. Okay? It is not done at the end of the unit either. This is, I hope you're not hungry. We'll reference food a couple of times. This is the meat and potatoes of the curriculum, of the unit, of what you're working on. We'll look at some appetizers. So think about your favorite appetizer. Dr. Stone, if you're in here, I'm putting you to work.
No pressure, right?
No pressure. I'm giving you fair warning. We'll give you some tastes of dessert at the end, so start thinking about lunch. It's never too early to start thinking about lunch, right? Okay, as you're texting, where do you guys want to go for lunch? It's okay. Okay, this is not what it is. This is not what we're talking about today. So what are we talking about? We go to our faculty. Do you play with these meme creators? They're so much fun. This is when we come to our faculty and say, PBL, I ain't got time for that. I ain't got no time for this. I have standards I have to cover. They have to know this fact. They have to know this date. No offense, do they? How many of you remember specific dates of all of the battles in World War II? And who was the general in the Civil War for this battle? How many of you remember those? You're good? Okay, excellent. Oh, okay, so, yeah, you don't count, no offense. So we don't remember those little details, and guess what? Here are our kids, and guess what? There's a little machine called the phone with Google on it that they can find those facts whenever Jeopardy calls them to memorize those facts, right? That's not to diminish and say what you are teaching is not important, because it is. But we have to think about what is it that we want our students to actually take away and remember. So that's kind of what PBL is. Are you going to have to give up some content? It's okay though. You're going to find that they discover things throughout this process that you wouldn't have even come close to covering in your content, that they're going to remember, right? Whoa. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, they can come back and say, hey, I remember that. Or guess what? You taught me this skill that I now use every day in my career. Okay? So this summer, one of the things that I was doing is setting the standard for project-based learning. It is, yeah. Did you do a book study too? Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have a copy of this, it's a great, and I'll leave it up here. You can take pictures, snap it, whatever you want to do. Amazon probably like $7, $8. But this is going to give you a real big overview of PBL, as well as some lessons you can probably just take, adapt, because we can never just take, because our students are different than these students. We can take and adapt them easy enough that is a good jumping place for PBL. So I'll leave this up here for you. As I was reading this book this summer, knowing that PBL is going to be another initiative this year in our school, I decided to take notes on my summer break and come up with a checklist. I thought, our teachers struggled the prior year of, here's PBL, do it, and here's Pam, she'll help you. Okay, that's great, and I helped a lot of people, but it's still a little bit of background always helps. So this is just kind of a checklist that I put together as I was reading through, knowing what PBL is, what PBL isn't, and helping my staff look at those differences. So this is your project checklist. If you're looking at a project, at the end of your unit, or close to the end of the unit, you can't like squeeze in a PBL after you've lectured about an event for 3 weeks and call it a PBL. It's still a project, okay? So, is the goal to teach the content? Is it found close to or the end of the unit? Was the content traditionally taught? That's not to say you're not going to have mini lessons throughout. Okay? That's not to say that you're not going to talk to your kids for a month while they're doing PBL. Okay? It's up to you to kind of pick and choose when is it appropriate. Like, kids just aren't going to be able to get this concept researching on their own. Okay? I'm a science teacher. We are the last people to give up our flipping content. They can't do that on their own. How are they going to learn about the atom if I'm not teaching it to them? Okay, true, right? Okay, so it's okay. You're allowed to talk to them. You're allowed to build in mini lessons throughout. You just have to change the structure up a little bit. We're not telling you not to do this stuff. It just looks and feels a little different. Okay, is it an extension of the content? You're still looking at a project. Okay, so what is PBL? If you can say yes to most of these, it's PBL. Is it authentic to the students' lives? Okay, and I feel that that's one of the most important things, because if they can't relate to it, they can't remember it. How many of you agree with that statement in your own life? If I can't relate to it, if it's not important to me, so why are our kids any different? Why do we assume and treat them differently than what we are? Okay, so if it's not important to me, I don't care. Even though it's like the most important thing in your life. Okay, it's not to everybody. So make it authentic to them. And that's one of the things that I came in and said, you know, what do you want to do today? What do you want? I will adjust and adapt based on what my audience's needs are. And of course, you gave me a 50-50, so, you know, we'll roll with that too. Is the project a unit? Are you starting day one with, here are the facts? Are you starting day one with a handout that says, this is what you're researching, and at the end, you can have a choice of either presenting it as a PowerPoint or presenting it as a video. Is that PBL? You're telling them what to research. You're giving them at the end, these are one of the two things that I want you to create for me. You might be able to spruce it up a little bit, but those are starting points. Those are potential points to make that project a good PBL. Okay, so you probably have one of those projects in your room right now. You can adapt. Are students working in teams? A lot of times, yes. But not the team we saw in the first meeting. Okay? And that's where the human-centered design comes into play. Are they responsible for designing the end product? Is there an authentic audience? And a lot of times, and we have been so fortunate at Montour with being able to collaborate with outside organizations on a regular basis to have these authentic audiences, but you may not always be, and that's okay. An authentic audience just simply means somebody other than you and your classroom full of students being the audience. Grab a couple of teachers. Say, hey, if it's your plan, come on in. We want to hear what you have to say about this end product. It completely changes the kids' attitude. Because then they're like, whoa, they weren't with me the whole time. Maybe I need to clarify things for somebody else. Grab kids from study halls if you can. Grab kids from other classes. Let them come in. Even if it's not the same grade level, it's probably better if it's a different grade level. Have them come in and be an audience. It's somebody besides you and those classmates, because guess what? They know you, they know those classmates, they don't care, because they're just so used to doing that. So anytime you can get new faces in, it's always going to kind of up the ante a little bit. This is driving question, driving everything that you do, okay? So whenever you're creating a PBL, like we always say, oh, take the chapter test and work backwards there with the curriculum. That's how you develop it, right? Work backwards. You can't work backwards with a PBL. You have an essential question, that's what you gotta start with. And then at the end, you kind of have an idea in your mind of some of the things that, you know, the kids can produce, but not always. Like we're starting a PBL in the one integrated class. We have no idea what they're gonna create in the end. That's okay. Okay, but you know these are kind of the micro steps to get to them designing an end project. Okay, so you have an idea. These are some of the things we can do. So you take your two endpoints and then you drive it into the middle. That's how you fill it in with the rest of the meat and potatoes. So we can think of this as our appetizer. What's your favorite? I like the stuffed mushrooms, like the crab stuffed mushrooms. Okay. So that kind of gives you an overall feel of what PBL is and how to work it. It's my favorite. Like, this is just my style of teaching. This is not everybody's style of teaching. That's okay. Okay, try it once, and I have another meme later on. Try it once, beware you may become addicted. Okay? So that's like that cheesecake at the end. Okay, so what is human-centered design thinking? Some of you know, some of you don't. This is just kind of a real quick, we're not even going to watch the whole thing.
What is human-centered design, and why does it matter? Also known as design thinking, user-centered design, human-centered design puts people at the core of its products and programs. It's about designing with, and not just for the end user, aiming to truly meet the needs of the beneficiary, customer, or client. Just another buzzword? Let's break down exactly what human-centered design is and why it matters to the global development community. Human-centered design has its origins in the private sector in fields like user interface design and human-computer interaction. While the development community has long recognized the need for more participatory approaches, the sector still receives criticism for designing for problems instead of designing for people. But what does it mean to design for people? Before creating a solution, development professionals must thoroughly understand the problem by engaging with communities and individuals, spending time with them, listening to their concerns, and understanding the specifics of their lives. This process involves the rigorous collection of qualitative data, which is turned into deep insights about a target audience, and then is used to design a set of workable, personalized, data-driven solutions for each specific community or country. This means it's inherently built from what works in a given context, instead of trying to adapt an existing solution to fit unique circumstances. The next stage of human-centered design is prototyping. Prototyping is about getting ideas into the community to get active participation. Organizations can create a rough prototype that is introduced into the community for feedback and further refined into a pilot. This may seem like a lot of work before you begin to implement a solution. What makes it worth it? Development practitioners are
So part of the problem is that last section there, and it's only a 3-minute video, so if you are interested in the rest of it, please let me know. But part of the hesitation in PBL in general with teachers is that iteration process. We don't have time for that. We got to move on to the next because guess what? My kids are tested at the end of the year. Okay, yeah, absolutely, I get that. But we're always also, especially, how many of you are secondary? Secondary, oh, beautiful, excellent. That's my home, like that's my world, so I get you. Elementary, God bless you, like I had no idea, like I have a 6-year-old, she's in kindergarten this year, like I had no idea what these elementary kids have to be taught in order for them to get to us and be like functional. Like, so thank you for that work, because we forget at the secondary level what it's like to have to teach new skills other than content areas, and we're always complaining, well, how do you teach this, and how do you teach these soft skills, and how do you teach somebody to be a problem solver, how do you teach somebody to be creative? They either have it or they don't. No, incorrect, we can teach them. Okay, and especially at the secondary level, I feel like that's kind of our job, because we're always seeing now, well, this is what this college and university is saying they're looking for, this is what the private sector qualities that they're saying that our kids are lacking coming out of high school, coming out of college to us. So yeah, it's our job to teach them, and they are teachable skills. So with that being said, when you're designing your PBL, you have a couple of main features that need to be included, and then we'll get into the human-centered aspects to how to make all of this and how to teach those unteachable skills. Okay, they kind of give you 7 as a gold standard. If you can get close to that, then you're doing a heck of a job. Okay, not every PBL is going to have every single experience, but the more you have, the more authentic and the more defined it will be as a true project-based learning experience for the kids. Okay, you have to be willing to give up content, but allowing them to discover new content you wouldn't have taught anyway. You have to be able to be flexible and let the kids make decisions throughout the process. It's not a rigid, this is what you're doing day 1, day 2, day 3. We stumbled upon an experience in our integrated class that we had not anticipated coming. For our launch for one of the units, we took the kids to Teen Screen in Pittsburgh. and watched a series of Holocaust videos, and there was a speaker. We hooked up with her, okay, a Holocaust survivor, and she visited our school once to meet everybody, okay, to talk to the entire 10th grade class. Beautiful, making connections there. Then she challenged our class with, hey, why don't you do this teddy bear drive? This is my passion, okay, this is my passion. So we're like, okay, 2 weeks before Christmas, everybody is collecting for everything else, like what are we, like we have other material that we anticipated going, and it was like, nope, stop, we're putting a hold on this. These kids are excited. They're geeked about going through collecting all of these bears. It was 2 weeks. We put a hold on what our initial plans were for 2 weeks while we did this. She just came out again last week. We presented, I mean, she was just blown away. She's like her new mom. She's like her grandma, you know, so. Just those connections and that experience, I have to say, I would love to take credit for all of this. I cannot take any credit for this at all. It was all the students. They're like, we want to make a commercial, we want to do these flyers, we want to get it out to the community, we want to give her these gifts, and we're like, okay, send us emails and we'll put them out. And they did, okay? Find a background for the green screen, let's film. They edited. Okay, so I would love to say that I teach them, but I don't. I just kind of give them that power to rock and roll on their own. Okay, so you have to be able to be flexible in what you're doing. So whenever our teachers are kind of, oh, put them together, it just makes sense, right? You know that reference? No, Frozen. Frozen, people. I'm dealing with 4-year-old twins and a 6-year-old kindergartner. This is the world I live in, okay. So, essential question, entry event, project workflow. The closer you can get to all of these 7 elements, the better your PBL experience is going to be for your kids. Essential questions, I'm not going to read these to you. Essential questions are essential, and I'm talking to my husband today before I leave. I'm like, all right, I better do spell check, hopefully everything's right. He's like, you need to delete questions with oils. Because he knows I like the essential oil. I'm like, oh, delete. And he's like, no, don't do that. I'm like, oh, but it's awesome. Okay. So these are personally essential questions that I have worked on with students over the past 7 years. Okay, and a lot of these are from this year and last year, to be honest with you. Different classes, not all of them were classes that I taught last year or this year. The first one that we're going to kind of brainstorm a little bit and have you interacting with the content is how might we increase voter turnout. Okay, that was done in a 12th grade government and economics class. So looking at how might we statements. You're including these kinds of statements because you are becoming an active participant as well. There is very rarely a day that I will be sitting there and the kids are working on a project that I am working on my own stuff. I am sitting there with the kids saying, hey, let's research this. Oh, look what I found. Oh, look what you found. Like, we are learning together. You have to also be an active participant or else it's just becoming a project. So sitting down and saying, what are you working on? Let me start to Google a little bit as well. Oh, did you see this? Oh, let me email you that. And then information that they teach you is mind-blowing. So having these, how might we, puts us all together on almost an equal playing field. An entry event is extremely important. It is that ignite excitement. And these are just some examples of different entry events that I've done before. The list can go on, but these are pretty easy ones that you can kind of get together. So we had the Energy Innovation Center. We always partner with them. They're actually just up the road in the Hill District. And they are a LEED Platinum building. So basically, like, they can run their own energy. Like, they can go off grid. They're pretty amazing if you're not from this area. Every year, they pose a problem to us, and we are they're our clients. We are actually the service people coming up with, here's your problem statement, here's your question. So we go there, get a tour of the facilities, and actually are able to spend time with our clients questioning them. So that's kind of a field trip client Q&A session as well. We had this year one of our special ed teachers. She's like, hey, for my PBL, I think I want to use the green screen. So I also pull technology in as much as I can. Only when appropriate, don't force it. She's like, I want to use the green screen as my entry event and kind of preview what they're researching, but also kind of show them one example of something they can create in the end. And she does know, she wanted to kill me when I told her I was using this. But just, it's hilarious. Like, we did this in about 20 minutes, just her and I. So I'll just show you a couple of things.
For our next book that we're going to read, it takes place during the Great Depression. And before we study that, I want to know what you know.
I had no idea she was
What
coming
happened?
dressed up.
Why did people stand in red lines? They said it was the greatest country in the world, and yet here we are. So what did people do? How did they get by? That's what I want you to find out. This is FDR.
And of course, we're gonna like, put your finger up, do, and like, you know, like pick his nose, like, you know, we're 12 years old too. This is the
It's hot in here. Oh.
I had to show you this last one because I had her sitting up on a table. She's like squatting there, and I'm getting like just the right angle.
Prize winner. You can research him. It's getting hot in here. Oh. Well, here I am at a mental hospital in the 1930s, and you can see this is what they thought was great treatment for mental health.
Okay, so that's something that we filmed as an entry-level event. Her and I were cracking up this entire time. I had tears rolling down my face, but it is, you know, we used Padcaster, Touchcast Studios, so if you go downstairs, I know they have a booth down there, an iPad, and iMovie. So there was nothing, you know, extreme or professional, as you can see, by any means. But this entry event was powerful and it was impactful because it was us doing it with the kids, okay? And that's, you have to be okay to put yourself there. So now how can we pull in some of this human-centered design thinking? And I'm gonna skip around on these slides a little bit because those of you who want to interact, now would be your opportunity. So affinity clustering. These are kind of my favorites and go-tos with everything. So how do we take this PBL experience that basically we have, you know, 2+ weeks that students are working in groups and collaborating with each other, how do we make sure that there's true collaboration that's taking place? How do we make sure that if we go back to that gold standard, that there's voice, that the students have a choice in what they're doing and how it gets done? This is where affinity clustering is one of my favorite go-to easy ideas. So basically, for an example, at the beginning of this year, in the integrated class, we took our unit called The Rise of the Dictators. So we were looking at pre-World War II and our 3 major dictators. And we threw Julius Caesar in there as well because we needed to get Caesar in as a part of the English curriculum. So we're like, hey, throw him in there. And then our PBL evolved into a feature film from all of this, okay? Like, we had no idea what was gonna happen, I'm gonna be completely honest, okay? So we started this with, let's just get to know these dictators a little bit. So we took and broke the class up into, okay, you get this dictator, this dictator, this dictator, one kid. There were probably 4 kids working individually on each of those different dictators. And we gave them like a class period. And we gave them a pack of sticky notes. Invest in sticky notes a lot if you're gonna do this because it makes things very easy to change and move around, okay? So the kids took about a class period, maybe a little bit less than a class period even, and we said, find out as much information as you can about this dictator. Every single thing in their life, okay? And we're not looking for specific dates and facts. We told them, we don't want specific dates, we don't want specific facts. We wanna know what makes this dictator tick, okay? So they found all of this crazy stuff, like, oh, that's exactly why he is who he was, okay? You know, you had Hitler. He had all of these phobias for some reason that people were going to kill him and poison his food. You know, you had Mussolini, and he had his own set of phobias. You saw, and we saw, like, we had no idea going in, like, some of these things were happening. Like, you saw that each one of those dictators did something good for their country. So they were taking a pack of sticky notes, and as they were researching, they were writing one idea, phobia to cats. And one of them did have a phobia to cats. One of them did this positive for their country. One of them did this positive to their country. So after you give the kids a whole bunch of these sticky notes, you can see them all around their desk, we have one kid go up at a time. This is where voice and making sure that everybody's participating and actively learning comes into play, and say, okay, what are your sticky notes? Put them up. After about 3 or 4 kids putting their sticky notes up together, they start to see relationships occurring. So it's really easy to take that sticky note and say, okay, I'm going to cluster this note with this note, and we're going to draw a circle around it, and we're going to call it positives for the country. And we're going to see that these are these sticky notes, and oh, well, all of these dictators had very similar approaches. We didn't say and sit in a class for 45 minutes or for 2 class periods and say, this is what this dictator did, and this is the same as what this dictator. They were discovering these on their own. And then they were able to take all of those relationships, all of those categories, and say, well, you know, begin to relate it to governments of today. Like, oh, this person has some very similar characteristics. Not naming any names for any countries. Okay. Very similar skill sets to what was happening pre-World War II. Okay, how did these people rise to power? So affinity clustering is a really quick way to get research ideas up there and to also find the relationships between those ideas. From there you can take, kind of reformulate. You may want to start to say, okay, what is your favorite relationship here? You know, what do you want to gravitate to? Maybe that's what becomes your formal research paper. Maybe that's what becomes your video. Maybe that's what becomes the program that you're going to create. Okay? So that's just one way that you can kind of start. And I've used these in the middle of PBLs. Like we're kind of at a standstill. Like, I don't know what to do with these kids. I don't know how to make them accountable. Let's affinity cluster them. Okay? Rose, thorn, bud. We're going to get back to in a second here. These two. Idea grid, and I'll kind of get you started here and then keep working. We're going to multitask for a couple of minutes here. This is another one of my go-to, love it, giving the students voice. And this is a great jumping off point for any PBL, especially if you have no idea. Just have an essential question, but have no idea what you want the kids to do in the end. That's an option too. That's okay. Okay. So what you can do here is you're kind of driving the focus for them, but they're still creating an end result on their own. So what we have here, and this is actually the exact activity that we did last year with one of our government classes. How might we increase voter turnout? So we gave the students options. On the top of the grid, you always want to give people categories, okay, whether it be an age group, a demographic, a characteristic of a specific demographic, anything that you want. Those characteristics go up to the top. So we didn't really know where we wanted the kids to focus. We wanted them to find their focus. So we gave them age ranges. Okay, we don't care, just get voters to vote. On the side is where you kind of put some ideas to get their brain juices flowing a little bit. Okay? So different types of events that you think might happen, and these are very big, broad categories. You want to keep these as broad as possible when you're doing this. Broad categories that they can kind of start to design and combine ideas for within the project itself. Okay? So games and, I mean, you can switch these out. You may even have some ideas you want to say, oh, I don't think, maybe next time you do this, you want to take this out and put that. Please give me suggestions. I'm always open to them. Okay? So these are the kind of things that we were working on. So basically what happens, and anybody would like to participate in this, you will come forward. I have the same grid. Usually what happens is, depending on the class size, I'll usually create 2 to 3 to 4 of these grids and break the kids up into like smaller groups. Okay, it's not necessarily the team that they're going to work with the entire time, but it's their brainstorming team. Okay, so I give them, and you're going to be cut short, usually about 15 to 20 minutes, and challenge them. If you can fill up, each of you, as a team, giving ideas, fill up this entire board. I'll give you a Reese's cup. I don't have Reese's cups. Sorry. Okay. So you challenge them and give them a reward. If you can fill up this board at the end of this time, then here's what you get. The trick is you're doing it by yourself. You are not allowed to talk to the rest of your teammates while you are standing and commiserating in front of this board. That's hard. They don't know how not to talk. And neither do we. You're going to do the same exact thing. Guarantee it. Because we're like, big kids, right? Because guess what? We were them once, too. Hard to believe I know. So what we're doing here is, if you would like to, you will take some stickies in either this board or that board, it doesn't matter. Divide yourself up, take a stack of stickies, and you're going to grab a pen, and I have some markers up here, and you're going to say, okay, for 18 to 21-year-olds, for 22 to 28-year-olds, maybe something good for them to do, and you're just thinking this. Maybe we could do like, we could probably relate to this in some way. This is not coming from a high school kids, we're adults here, people. Okay. A beer pong tournament. Maybe that's what can get people to vote. Wow, but maybe it can. Okay. So you are just brainstorming any idea, as wild and wacky as you think it is. One idea per sticky, and you're slapping it up on the board without talking to anybody. And you have X number of time to do that. Who wants to participate? Okay, I'll just throw these around. Okay, and while we're doing this, I'm going to multitask. So hopefully you can multitask a little bit with me here. Okay, take some sticky, pass them around, take some sticky, pass them around. Okay. Cut them in half, Divide, conquer, divide. Who else sees them? You want me to keep passing back? Administration, I may or may not have taken So while you're doing that, everybody clear on the instructions? I don't care what you go to here. Okay, just, get up, talk, go, and don't talk. Don't talk, I'm sorry. Don't talk. But get up and place as you have ideas on your boards. Now, of course, in this situation it's a little bit different. But in the situation you're in the classroom, they're all huddled around that sticky note board. Okay, they're all getting their ideas in there. And you have however much time you need to be able to do that. So, what's the next step in this process? Crazy lady? Well, let me tell you. What I have found works best is after your time, the kids are then going to say, hey, time's up, let's go back and look. Now you can talk. Now you're going through all of the sticky notes that you've placed on the board, giving your idea. This is how I thought, maybe this could work. Great. Now everybody has a voice. Everybody is explaining what they're doing. From that, what I have typically do, you take and run with it, how you do it, is I will say, okay, now everybody who's around this board here, take your top 3 ideas. Doesn't have to be yours, it can be yours. By the way, we're doing this because our ideas are the best, right? Like, you have an idea, so Stinkies, bring them up, move on your way. Okay? Your idea is the best. That's a human, right? Our idea is the best. We should run with my idea. And then when you have 4 kids in a group that all have an idea, and that one powerhouse kid comes through and starts to micromanage the rest of the team, the rest of the ideas just go out the window. And now, that's what turns the rest of the kids off from doing this group work. So we're continually giving our kids a choice throughout this. So we're saying, okay, take the top 3 ideas. You can put the restriction in. One of them can't be yours, because your ideas aren't always the best. Right? So we take those, and we take those top 3 ideas. Depending on what we're doing, like, I'll go around to the groups then and say, okay, pull out the big sticky notes. Invest in sticky notes, generic or otherwise. Okay, and I'll go around to those groups, and I'll go around to the kids, and I'll pull out a big sticky note, and I'll say, okay, here's your grid. I think it doesn't work. You take these stickies, and you place them on, you can call this grid whatever you want, but since we're making an event, we're going to say, and this is literally what I do, like it looks like this. Okay. You have your cost, and you have your effectiveness. Take those 3 ideas that everybody now has, place them on here. Okay. So we have, guess what, kids? We have no money for this event. So what do they see? If you're math, you can pull in a trend line there. You say, oh, this is the sweet spot here, or here, or wherever you're looking. Okay, this is where most of our ideas lie. You don't need to do that if you don't want to. But it gives them a chance to say, okay, we have something that is not so effective, but is going to cost a whole lot. If we don't have a budget, maybe we shouldn't use that idea. And it gets them thinking about other students' ideas, what they're doing, how they're doing it. And then they start to say, oh, well, this is really effective, and it's not going to cost a lot. Those 4 stickies that are kind of clustered together, maybe we should start to kind of pull and develop ideas from this. This is all content driven based on your essential question. So pulling that full circle back into PBL. This is how you get the PBLs to work with teams, because you can't do PBL by yourself. Okay? Then from there, this is what I like. I like this part. Then I get you to share out a little bit here. From there, we're going to go back to concept mapping. So based on, their final decisions, these are the best 3 stickies that we have. These are the best ideas. Let's combine them together in one final pitch. Here's your big sticky, draw it out. Okay? So they get their big sticky. Give me a snappy title. They're pitching. They have to pitch this, usually first to their classmates. We'll get some feedback. Tell me, who are the stakeholders? Who do we need to make sure that this is going to actually work? Draw it out. Give me little stick people here. Okay, I need the principal. Okay, we need the custodian. So we're gonna, as much as you can actually visualize, the better. Now in the middle here, all of this, draw out what this concept would look like. That's hard. Okay, you're limited on words. Don't use words. I don't care. Okay. I want to see a picture, because what's that expression? A picture is worth. Okay. Picture's worth a lot more than just a lot of words. Okay. Draw it out. And then we have that group come up and say, here's our pitch. In 60 seconds or less, in 30 seconds or less, in 40, whatever time you have left in this period, you need to get this done to when we want tomorrow. This is how much time that you have. Pitch this proposal to us. Okay, they come up as a group and they talk as a group. All of these ideas came from a combination of those groups. Is everybody following my one? Okay, like 8,000 miles a minute. So it pulls these ideas into a project and then visually gives it to the group. So of course, you want this to be an iterative process. The first time out of the gate, the first year that you taught Think Back, for some of us it's longer ago than others. I'm included, okay? What do you think about those first kids that you taught? Oh God, I feel so bad for them. Okay, we were all there. We were all learning along with them, correct? Exactly, okay? And since then, the first time out of the gate was just bad. And that's okay. You were kind of depending on people at that time to say, hey, maybe you might want to think about changing this or doing this differently, or, you know, it was good, but, okay? So that's the same thing that we want to do with our kids. Kids could be mean. Adults could be mean too, right? Okay. Kids could be mean. You want this to be constructive criticism. And I hate that term too. Like, what is constructive criticism? You want the kids to have feedback that is meaningful to them so that they can proceed with making their final idea better. Okay, you want to call it constructive criticism. I call it visualize the vote. I call it roast the bud. I call it letting the kids have voice in this iterative process. So whichever way you want to do it, these are the two these are my go-tos. There's like a whole book. By the way, I got to give a shout out to Luma Institute if you have an opportunity to do Luma, become Lumified. They are a company in a couple of cities around the United States and around the world who will offer this training to anyone that will pay for it. Okay, but they are known for providing companies, professionals. You know, I took this training and it was a group of teachers, and then I was working with some government officials sitting next to me. That was a little intimidating, and then, you know, we're all working together, coming from all of these different facets of life, using different techniques. Okay, so it's not always just educators working with educators. And it's nice to see what happens in the, you know, in the outside world as well. So Rose, Thorn, Bud is going to allow for feedback that, and we use this a lot as professionals in our building as well. But just recently we have our integrated students designing an actual museum within our building for contributions, local contributions to World War II. So this is one of those ways, like we had them pitch their design, so, you know, lay it out graphically. This is our design. And then we said, okay, within our class, we're just gonna roast, thorn, bud. Okay, we're in our safe space. We've all kind of gone through this experience together. So here, this is the color for positive. So you need colored stickies too, not just yellow. You need your colored stickies too. So here's your color for rose. You know, anything that is in the yellow sticky is gonna be positive. You can color code whatever, you know, you have available. Here's your colored sticky. Anything that you think is positive and great, and you really can't think of ways to change it. Write a word, write a phrase. You want to make these succinct and easy. Okay, 1, 2, 3 words, no more than that. Our honors kids do the same types of, you know, feedback, and it's like they're using their pencils, and they have like 2-point font. They struggle with those, like, no, you get a sticky. So I've resorted to, no, you get a sticky and one of these big markers. And that's all the feedback you're allowed to give, because they're so detail oriented, just by, right, exactly, by nature, like you have to kind of give them restrictions. So this is kind of what I've resorted to. This is our general class, and with our general class, we had them rose. Everybody has to give one rose. Everybody has to give one thorn. You could give more. So thorn is kind of your, might want to rethink this aspect of your concept completely. Question mark on this. This is, I question, I'm not really sure what's happening here. Needs clarification. Okay? That's what your thorn is. Your bud is, wow, that really has some potential to grow into a rose. You may want to think about, a little confused here, but good start. Those are the kind of things that you're looking for in a rose thorn bud. So the kids got all of these stickies, and you can see how they're kind of organizing all of these together. And guess what I said? Here you go, kids. Here's your next big Post-it note. Have at it. Take the information that you got from your peers, iterate, revise, make it better. No offense, because they want that great for you. They're okay with that. Second round, decided to say, hey, administration, hey, principals, hey, teachers that have plans, hey, students that are sitting in the library for study hall, guess what, you're coming down here. And now you're pitching this new proposal to them, not us. We've been in this experience, we know what we're talking about because we have all had the same experiences building through this, but now you're showing it to outside people that have no idea what in the world you're doing. It ups the ante. Now they're putting more detail, like, oh, maybe I need to clarify this. Maybe this needs to have a tag to it. Maybe, instead of having a little paper airplane, I should, build something or make something. So that comes into play, and that is where your authentic audience comes into play. Now we're still in the midst of this. The deadline for this project is the middle of March. So if you'd like to come to our grand opening, please. Come to. So we still have a bigger outside audience that we're presenting to, but it helps to get, even though it was not an outside audience for this, you still have outsiders who have no experience with what they're doing coming in and providing additional feedback. So we actually asked our audience members from the outside to do the same thing. Here is a new set of rose thorn bud, please. But on top of that, we asked them to visualize the vote as well. So what is that here? So the first year I taught this class, it was just a very general, like, here's PBL. And I only have 6 minutes left. Here's a PBL class, have at it, do whatever you want to do. Okay. So one of the ideas that I kind of looked at was, well, let's redesign the school flag. Because we have a school flag. Okay. Took them to the local historical society. Why do we have a local historical society? Okay, so now they're learning about their community. Now they're learning about their town. Great, easy place to start. Please take it. Run with it. Run with it. So we did some research. We did some interviews with people around the community. Took them to the local historical society, which I had not been in before. It was literally like one little room. And I scheduled like 4 hours to be there with them. I have the bus driver's information. But we got a lot of information out there. And these kids lived in this community their entire, short entire lives. But they had no idea it was from a mining town. And they had no idea it was at one point just all farms. You see these big strip malls and you see, with Starbucks on every other corner. Like, where are our roots? So, making them have phone calls to people in the community is a new experience. Like, it's ugly. It is, yeah, you're like, what? You can't talk to an adult on the phone? No, people, they can't. Okay, think about it. How awkward is it for you to call a complete stranger? And you're an adult, you've done it a lot of times. That is a completely new experience for them, and you have to embrace that. And you have to coach them prior to that. Like, those are the things that we take for granted, these soft skills that these kids have. Well, they don't. They have to be taught somewhere. Just like my daughter had to be taught somewhere how to, write the letter A. somebody before you had to teach you. So that is our job, and I kind of take that personally. So we had our girls in our environmental class this year. They were calling, because we're doing a fundraiser, they were calling every other day, all of these companies and organizations. We're like, yep, it's time to call again, and we, start to pick at them like, oh, you made a relationship with this company, you better call them back. So it takes, it's a different skill set that is forgotten about. And that's whenever you're doing these things with authentic outside audiences, you're bringing those skill sets in. And they don't even realize that they're doing it. Our English 10 class, they were like, we didn't read a novel yet this year. We're like, we haven't written anything yet this year. You kind of read Julius Caesar, but we did it in a way that it wasn't like, okay, today is SSR, here's the chapters that you need to do, and then here's the notes that you need to take. And, oh, you mean to tell me you didn't write a script for the reenactment of the movie, of the book, the modernization of the book that you just read? Like, you slide these skills in and they have no idea. They're like, oh, we haven't written anything. I disagree. Okay? And you give them a list and they're like, oh. Yeah, because it's not something, they're getting these skills, and that's something that you can argue as well. You're getting the skills, it just looks different. It just looks a little different. So with the Visualize the Vote, what you're doing is you are giving them little stickies now. Did you have any idea there was such a variety of stickies? You give them the little stickies and you say, okay, everybody in the class with that concept poster, put a little sticky on the specific part of that concept poster that you really like. And then from there, put a bigger sticky, just like your regular standard stickies, put a bigger sticky on the overall concept that you like the best. And then from there, you can still have them like say, okay, here's our sticky notes, here's this big concept. If you kind of gravitate towards there, then this is the big project that you're working on at the end, depending on how you have it framed. This one was kind of an overall, do we want to take these two competing and combine them in any way type of ideas before we, send it out. So we involved the entire staff and student body to kind of be a part of this process. We did that on a Google form, but this is what we videoed and sent out to everybody else. So you just got to get creative in terms of how you want to engage an outside grouping. Storyboarding, authentic audiences, we've kind of covered that. Technology that I've used, we're running out of time here, I have like 30 seconds left. These are the different types of technology that have been incorporated into each one of these. The Courtyard project that the students are currently raising money on, they developed it in Revit. Okay, Autodesk, AutoCAD free these days. Okay, developed it, used Screencastify to get a rendering of it. We used for our modernization with the storyboards, we just used the Padcaster, iPad minis, and iMovie. Some of the kids, we had Adobe, it's part of that same Autodesk suite. Premiere installed, some of the kids had experience with that. Guess what, I was sitting down right next to them saying, okay, here, let's figure this out. I'm familiar with iMovie, but I'm not familiar with Premiere. And Premiere is what we have on the desktops. So guess what, we'll figure it out together. So you have to be in the trenches with them. That's what makes it fun. And that's what gives them a completely different experience. Like, oh, I taught my teacher something today. Gives them a sense of pride, because they do. Assessments, we didn't get to. I so apologize. If you'd like me to share any of these with you, please let me know. Assessments equal lots of rubrics plus self-evaluations. So, yes, throughout this entire process, we've given daily project rubrics where the teachers, it's just effort that the teachers observe throughout the day. Quick peer evaluation is just that. It's a rating between 1 and 5. This is what, at this point in the project, this is how I feel my group mates are doing. Okay, that is kept confidential, but we do average them together and put it in the gradebook as a score. We don't want to say, well, Susie gave me a 3 that creates animosity, but, overall, this is what you've averaged, so, and a lot of times they can't argue with that. They're like, yeah, I know. Maybe I should be picking up my slack a little bit. So it gives them some feedback. We have them do a lot of self-reflections, whether it be within the quick peer evaluation rubric or in paragraphs. This one is actually done on a Google form. And then of course you have your, your typical final presentation rubric that you can pull a bajillion different examples from. Okay. So different rubrics for different vices. It just kind of depends on what you're doing and what you feel the kids need. So final thoughts. For the naysayers, yes, PBL takes time, but the skill set that they're getting, you're teaching kids how to be creative. You're teaching kids how to problem solve. But you're not just doing it with worksheets. Okay, yes, you may sacrifice some content, but they're taking skills and new information with them that are going to allow them to actually be functional at the next step in their life. Okay. Yes, you can still grade a PBL. Yes, groups can do different projects and it's okay. If we took this out of here, coffee shop discussions, and a scavenger, let's do a coffee shop discussion at a scavenger hunt. Let's do, we can combine that together. That could be a really cool idea. Okay. Okay, yes, technology can be integrated, but don't force it in. You might fail, and guess what? You might fail the first time. And it's okay. It's okay. Find somebody to support you, and you're gonna get it the next time. We had an epic fail last year with the chemistry PBL. They're at it again this year. They're making changes. Have to restart from scratch. No, you do not need to have everything from those gold standards to actually be a gold standard. The more comfortable you get, the more resources you'll have, the more you can integrate and up the ante. So, try it, but beware, you might get addicted. And you may end up like me. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Hopefully you took something away with you. If you would like my contact information, please, I will put it up there real quick. Yes, the one thing I did forget on my screen. I will be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have. So we'll do this real quick. Let's put it here. Good. Big enough for everyone? Thank you. Okay. I can do that. Thanks for staying the whole time.
That's great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. Well, sticky notes, I'll just grab in a minute.
So when you got started with PBL, what were some of the big hurdles you had to do?
Grading. Grading and
questioning how they were going to grade.
how they were going to grade. Like myself, I was the only one in the building that was doing PBL. So it was like, what do I do? I had 1 year of class that everybody was doing and the next year it was like, what do I do next year? So that was the biggest hurdle, was trying to get a balance between how to keep them accountable and make sure that they were still engaged. So pouring in as much of it, these different activities. Absolutely. Yes, yes. Sorry to interrupt. No, that's okay.
We're, in my school, we're starting a small book study that's all. A lot of it's Lexington stuff.
Yeah, I have that as well. They're amazing. Yes.
And we started off with the guy who's he's a tech coach.
Okay.
And then I have a literacy coach as well. So three of us went through the book first. Well, that was the principal. And then, so then the following year we did that for summer. So I tried to start the school year. We had a small group of teachers